Good morning or good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy that everyone is here on Monday. Sorry, I cannot be here to spend time with you, but I will still be recovering from surgery when you guys see this. And so I just want to make sure that we are still on track and you guys are still able to get all your lessons done. So let's get started. So today we're going to be doing our week 4, day 1 graphic organizer. Our objectives for today, students will unlock the first analytic writing prompt for the school year. Students will develop and strengthen their writing by planning while using a graphic organizer. Throughout the year, we will be engaging in analytic writing to respond to our text selections. Our analytic writing will be either giving an option, or giving an opinion about a text, analyzing a text, or writing a narrative or story. Each cycle will include an analytic writing prompt for us to think about and then craft a response. It gives us the opportunity to process what we have read and draw conclusions. It also helps me as a teacher know how to support you as a reader and as a writer. And so we actually started looking at our writing prompt and how to unlock the prompt on Thursday of last week. So many of you may be familiar with our strategy of unlocking the prompt. Prior to responding to any prompt, we need to first make sure we understand what the prompt is asking us to do and what is required to answer it. During the first few prompts of the school year, I will work with you to help you unlock the prompt, which we started on Thursday and we're going to continue today. However, as time goes on, it will become more of your responsibility to unlock and analyze writing prompts. So just to go over again, let's review how we unlock the prompt. So to unlock the prompt, we're going to, step 1, read carefully. Step 2, circle or highlight key direction verbs. Remember, verbs are things that we do, so they are actions or activities. So verbs are things like write, run, tell, talk, help, play, drive. Those are verbs, and we will be circling or highlighting them. We're also going to underline important ideas. Step 3, explain what the prompt is asking you to do in your own words, and then plan your response to the prompt. When we are doing our unlock the prompt, we need to consider the evidence within the text to support our response. So whenever we do a writing, you still need to use details from the text. That could be details about characters, about places, or about events from the story. Also, you need to consider your thinking that supports the evidence you choose. So you're not going to include everything from the story, then you'd just be rewriting the story. But we do want to make sure that we are including details. And so, our first analytic writing prompt for this year is write a sequel that tells the story of how Flora and Ulysses become friends. Be sure to use what you've learned about Flora to help you write the next part of your story. In your response, be sure to write a beginning that grabs the reader's attention. Use transitional words and phrases to link ideas. Those words are also, overall, additionally, as a matter of fact, surprisingly. Write an ending that summarizes the sequel and use proper language and conventions. So capitalization, usage, punctuation, and spelling, which is what we've been working on in our other writing activities. But before we can do anything, we need to unlock that prompt so that way you can prepare for what you are going to be writing. Just to go over again, remember that a sequel is the continuation of a story. We talked about it on Thursday. A sequel is, for example, they made Frozen. Then they made Frozen 2, where they had the characters from the first Frozen movie, but they talked more about those characters, kept the story going with same ideas, but a little different in events. So that's what we're going to be working on. We also went over other sequels as well, and you guys came up with some different examples too. So our step number 1 is to read the prompt carefully. So our prompt, write a sequel that tells the story of how Flora and Ulysses become friends. Be sure to use what you have learned about Flora to help you write the next part of the story. Step number 2, we need to highlight or circle the key direction verbs. So step 2, highlight the key direction verbs. So remember, verbs are things that we can do, activities, actions, movement. And so verbs could be talking, writing, running, playing. And so when we read through our prompt, we find that we have quite a few verbs. We have write, tells, use, help, and then write again. So it is important to highlight those key direction verbs because it's going to help us focus our ideas on what we're actually going to be doing in our writing. Next, we got to underline those important ideas. So what is this prompt actually asking us to do? What is the focus? What is the main idea? What's that big idea that we need to understand so that way we can answer the writing prompt? So this is step 2 continued is we need to underline important ideas. So important ideas, they want us to write a sequel, not a summary. So they don't want us to tell them what happened in the story that we read. This is a sequel. They want us to keep the story going. So we're not going to say, in the story, Flora did blank. In the story, Ulysses did blank. Because we're writing a sequel, not a summary. So we're creating our own story. Also, how Flora and Ulysses become friends. So that is the big idea. That's the big picture of what they want in this writing prompt. They want us to keep the story going, continue the story as a sequel, and focus on how Flora and Ulysses become friends. Also, we need to include what we've learned about Flora. So that way we can write the sequel or the next part of our story. Now, step number 3 is explain what the prompt is asking you to do in your own words. Because we've gone through, we found the verbs, we found the big ideas, but there's a lot of extra stuff in there. So what can we do to make it so this prompt makes sense to us? So I went through and thought, I really only need to keep what we highlighted and what we underlined. So I went through and I crossed out the words that I didn't think I needed. But I kept all my highlights and all my underlines so that way I could explain what the prompt is asking me to do in my own words. When I get rid of my crossed out words, this is what I have left, only using the highlighted and the underlines from step 2. So for step 3, explain what the prompt is asking you to do in your own words. Write a sequel telling how Flora and Ulysses become friends. Use what you've learned about Flora to help write the next part. So after getting rid of a bunch of other stuff, I was able to break down our writing prompt into something that is easier for us to understand. So step 3 is we explained what the prompt is asking us to do in our own words. And now step number 4 is to plan your response to the prompt. So now that I understand I'm writing a sequel, I need to make sure I understand the elements of a story. I know that all stories have characters, setting, and events. I've created a graphic organizer for us to use to plan our writing. And so this is a graphic organizer you guys are going to have access to. And this is our graphic organizer. writing a new scene. So the first thing we always need to do is have a description of what is going to happen. It's kind of a summary of what we're planning in our head. What do we want to happen? Who are the characters? What are we looking at? We also need to look at what are the characters doing in the scene? What are their actions? What is happening? We need to think about where are the characters going to be, especially for our current story. If Flora and Ulysses, we have outside of Flora's house. We have Mr. and Mrs. Tickham's house that we see. We also have Flora's house that we see. So there are 3 choices from what we read in the story of places where our characters could be in our sequel. So we need to pick one on where the characters are going to be in our scene. What are the characters saying? So we have, what are they doing? What are the events? Where are they? What is the setting? And what are the characters saying? What is Flora going to say? Is Ulysses going to talk? Who is going to say what to have dialogue in our story? Also, what are the characters thinking? Because right now, where we left off in our stories, Ulysses doesn't talk yet. But Ulysses has the power to think. So in your sequel, are you going to make it so Ulysses can talk? Or are you still going to have it where Ulysses can only think and do new activities? And then what are the characters feeling? Are they happy? Are they sad? Are they surprised? And so these are some of the things that we're going to be looking at for our analytic writing. I'm going to give you an example of what I would put as a sequel, and we're going to go through it together so that way you guys can have an idea of how to use this graphic organizer. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write a brief description. So for my story, I would like for Flora to keep Ulysses as a pet, because Miss Wright has all these pets. So I would want to keep Ulysses as a pet. So that's what I want Flora to do. But Flora is not an adult, so she has to convince her mother to let her keep Ulysses. Most parents wouldn't want a pet squirrel. So Flora's mom is going to give her a week to teach Ulysses how to be a good house squirrel. I want Flora to teach Ulysses how to be a superhero because Flora loves the comic books, The Amazing Incandesto. And we saw that Ulysses now has some pretty super squirrel strength. So I want that to be a part of my story too. And while Flora teaches Ulysses to be a superhero, I want Flora and Ulysses to become friends. And so did I tell the whole story with words and the setting and everything in my brief description? No, I didn't. I just said what I want my story to look like with some short little ideas. So that way, while I'm planning, if I forget what my thoughts were, I can look at my description and say, oh yeah, I wanted that to happen. And that'll help me with my planning, and it'll also help me with my writing. That way I can make sure everything makes sense all at the same time. So now that we have our description done, next we need to look at what are the characters doing in the scene. And I did some of this in my description because I said, well, Flora has to convince her mom to keep the squirrel. So that's something that Flora has to do. She has to go and have a talk with her mom to convince her mom to let her keep this squirrel. And Flora is going to teach Ulysses to be a superhero. That's an activity too. And so by writing my brief description, I've also started with my first, what are the characters doing in the scene box. And so I said, Flora brings Ulysses inside the house. Flora begs her mother to keep Ulysses as a pet, and Flora teaches Ulysses a new superhero trick. I didn't do anything crazy. I just used the sentences and the ideas that I had in my brief description up top. I just put them in that little box so that way I remember. Next, where are the characters in the scene? So I can look at the brief description that I wrote. Flora wants to keep Ulysses as a pet. Flora tries to convince her mom. Mom gives her a week. So, where would Flora keep Ulysses as a pet? Where would that be? It wouldn't be in Miss Tickham's house because Flora doesn't live there. It wouldn't be outside because you can keep some pets outside. But if her mom gives her a week, it might be because her mom is worried that maybe the squirrel won't be potty trained. Or maybe the squirrel will make a mess inside of her house. So for my sequel, I put that Flora, Ulysses, and Flora's mother are all inside of Flora's house because she wants to keep Ulysses as a pet. And her mom is concerned that Ulysses is going to make a big old mess in this house. So just by looking at my description that I wrote up top, I was able to put the answers for my first two boxes. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. No worries whatsoever. Now, what are the characters saying in the scene? So I have what they're doing. I have where they are. So what could they be saying? What might Flora say to her mom or to Ulysses? Because we know that Flora and her mom have to have a conversation because Flora wants to keep Ulysses as a pet. And we know that Flora's mother is not too happy because she's concerned that this squirrel might make a mess. So she gives Flora a week to figure it out. So what could they be saying? Flora trying to convince her mom. I put that Flora said Ulysses needs a home. Flora's mother says Ulysses can stay for a week. And remember, Flora is going to teach Ulysses some super cool superhero tricks. So I had Flora say, look what Ulysses can do. And Flora's mother say, I have never seen a squirrel pick up something so heavy. Because we know from the earlier part of Flora and Ulysses that Ulysses has super squirrel strength and can lift up a vacuum with a single hand. So I'm using my description and I'm using my first two boxes to help answer the rest of my graphic organizer. So next, what are the characters thinking in the scene? What are they thinking? This will help us, especially if maybe you decide Ulysses doesn't learn how to talk. Maybe he can still only think. I went with Ulysses doesn't know how to talk yet, so he only uses his thoughts and his actions. So Flora is thinking that Ulysses is going to become a superhero. Ulysses thinks that Flora takes care of me and that Flora is a good friend. And Flora's mother thinks that squirrels cannot be superheroes. She's about to be very surprised. And so our last one is, what are the characters feeling in this scene? So feeling, are they happy, sad, angry, anxious, nervous, upset, tired? How are they feeling in your sequel? So for my sequel, I have Flora excited and proud because she has a superhero as a friend. She has a super squirrel. And Ulysses feels loved and appreciated because Flora saved his life. And then she taught him how to be a superhero. And I said that Flora's mother is concerned. She thinks the squirrel Ulysses will destroy her house. But then she's surprised when he has superhero strength. And so now it's going to be your turn. So this is the sequel that I came up with. This is the sequel that I wrote. But now you get to start to develop your own sequel. So what we're going to do is it's time for you to prepare your own graphic organizer for our writing prompt. Please go to Google Classroom, click on the Google Form Assignment Week 4, Day 1, Graphic Organizer. When you are finished, be sure to click the Submit button. You will be able to go back and change your answers. So let's get started.